So you want to edit a design and it's expanded or it's lettering and you want to change the shape of those letter forms. What do you do? Well, converting to wireframe is one option for you. This is an expanded version of a design that I digitized, but let's look at it as though this is something that you got from a digitizer and you wanted to edit how things overlapped or the shape of one of these forms. Well, to do that, you can convert these elements to wireframe. So if you wanted to, for instance, make this element come down a little bit farther, you could do that. You'd have to navigate to it. And because expanded stitches, let's get this out of 3D, because expanded stitches have all these jumps that go back to the middle, it can be a little bit difficult to kind of select just the bit that you want unless you go into just the project view and select it this way, or you could hide the colors you don't want and then select underneath of them. But once I have an expanded element selected, what I would then do is right click on it, go to operations, convert the object to wireframe. Now I use this frequently enough that I have a keyboard shortcut set up for it via the accelerator editors. Once I do that, if you look in the project view, it now has a walk stitch. So that was the underlay, and it still is acting as underlay, but it converted it into wireframe, and it read that as a walk stitch. And then you have a wireframe element, and then a walk stitch, which is acting as a travel, and then another wireframe element, and then this weird little walk stitch. That's actually the tie stitch. So when you're converting expanded to wireframe, the software is going to look at all the different kind of pieces and say, okay, you were a bunch of stitches, you're about the same length, I think you're a walk stitch. Okay, or a walk element. And then if there's a bunch of them that kind of stack up, it may become a fill. Or if it is a bunch of stitches that go back and forth, it will see that as a satin. So that will kind of become a column element. Now the thing about that is you're not going to get a complex fill. You're not going to get a fill that then travels and then comes back to itself. You will get a fill and then a walk element that travels and then another fill. So it will not look exactly like what you're used to with wireframe elements, but it will be wireframe elements that you can then edit. You just may have a few more of them than you're used to. So if I wanted to edit this piece, again, it's with that jump stitch, it's a little difficult to select. I could grab that and then I'm going to hold shift and click and drag a box around those two wireframe points, and I could bring them down. I could bring this over just a touch. So I can extend that down into this space a little bit more. And if I wanted that to curve, you could right click and add a curve point and drag this over. So you can really just wireframe edit those pieces. Now, one thing to look at, let's grab this S real quick. There we go. So if I convert this to wireframe, here we've got satin. That will be a column type. Here we've got this kind of patterned fill. And it's going to do its best to figure out what that is, but there's a good chance that when I do this, right click, operation, convert object to wireframe. Yep. It got that it was a fill. It just, and it got, for the majority, it got the stitch lengths of the fills right. It just a little bit missed that step pattern. So it's going to get you really, really close. It may not be exactly the same, but you do have access to those properties. So if you wanted to go in and mess with those properties or change those properties, you absolutely could. To maintain the integrity of the design, it is very common for me to only convert the elements that I want to edit. I'm not going to convert the whole thing. I could, but I'm going to lose a lot more information. If I only convert the bits that I need to edit, I'm going to keep a lot of the integrity of the design that the digitizer provided for me. Converting expanded designs kind of processes those expanded stitches, but with lettering, we don't have expanded stitches. We have the wireframe. We have everything the digitizer used. It's just stored a little differently. So if we right-click, go to Operations, and convert lettering to wireframe, all it does is break this apart into the pieces the digitizer used or created. So here we have all the pieces that make up the lettering. You can then begin to manipulate those pieces as you would like. So let's swoop this down. Smooth this out a touch. And you can manipulate those wireframes, but you are not losing anything because you are starting with the wireframes themselves. You're just kind of unlocking them from the lettering element. Converting lettering to wireframe is a way to get at those letter forms. It does a few things. One, you can learn how the digitizer created those letters if you're trying to learn how to digitize your own. So you can see this is where they traveled, this is how they moved. It also allows you to alter the letter forms themselves to better match whatever artwork you're trying to match. Now, it does kind of convert everything to shapes, so you can't really change the spelling anymore, and you certainly can't really change the alphabet anymore, but it does give you the flexibility to go in and edit those letter forms. So converting expanded to wireframe and converting lettering to wireframe is a way for you to get at more editable pieces in your embroidery designs.